right? I'm not able to somehow manage, because of which, productivity issue, then the revenue problem, everything they bring in. So at the outset, it may look like, he or she is having a team issue, team conflict, right? But the minute this focus is on that person who is sitting in front of me, then the journey goes inward. We start.
Our ever-changing world calls upon the most courageous, resilient, and relentless of us to face its most extraordinary challenges. To help you embark on this journey, we present the Impactful Coaching Podcast, your oasis for inspiration and a beacon to spark the fires of greatness within you. I'm Joseph. I will be your ally in this journey to empower your potential. Join us each week as we dive deep into the heart of ambition, drive, and success to unravel compelling stories of daring leaders who dreamed, struggled, and achieved victory. Our journey begins now. How's everybody doing today? This is the Impactful Coaching Podcast. My name is Joseph. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time here, sit back, relax, and get to know one more wonderful coach in the space. I can go on and on, just talk about how grateful I am to be doing this, and one of these days I will. But today I'm here with Suba Lakshminarasimham of SLN Brand Studio. Suba, how are you doing today? How are you feeling?
Beautiful. Joseph, first of all, thanks for pronouncing my surname appropriately. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. I may or may not have practiced a couple of times just to be sure.
Ah.
So just little inside baseball. I looked at it like some people have multiple last names, like Freddie, Prince, James, John H. Jr., right? Okay, that was an exaggeration. But so what I did was I just broke it down phonetically. So Lakshmi space Nar space Simham. And then it just kind of came together. If people are struggling, that I don't know, maybe that might be the way to advise them. I guess I can I foreshadow a little bit, but one of the subjects that we're going to be covering today is something that I do have some personal experience with, in the sense that I didn't handle it correctly. I would have loved to get some of your professional feedback had I access to it at the time. And so we're going to be talking about something today in terms of like conflict management that I have a personal stake in. I think a lot of people are going to have a personal stake in. And so I'm really looking forward to covering that. But our opening question is nothing new to podcasting. Tell us what you do and what you're up to these days.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me to be partnering with you in this space, Joseph. Yeah, thanks for that. And as you already introduced my name, Suba Lakshminarasimham, and people call me Suba is my first name, right? Mm-hmm. It's my name. And I'm an ICF credentialed coach. I just got my PCC a couple of weeks ago. So I predominantly work with the C, D, and E suite professionals in the corporate, across industries. And I have touched upon almost all the industries, under the sun. That's how I would like to call it, call it as. So, and apart from the, audience, there are three different areas I work with. And as a coach, one is their leadership development, right? How they want to build their career, how they want to grow in their career in that leadership ladder. That's one. And then the second is workplace conflict management, where I work deeply with them. It's a deep work. Definitely we'll be discussing more in that space. One-on-one as well in group or team scenarios I work with when it comes to the corporate setup. And then the third one, it's not new or it's not an addition, whereas a bridge between what I already shared, right? Self-management or emotional management. Mm-hmm. Whether it is conflict or is a growth or a goal or a problem statement, everything starts with how my emotions are driving my action, right? So emotional management, aka self-management is the third area that I closely work with, coach people on. These three areas basically. And of course, I live in India, Bangalore, husband and one son of 12 years. And of course, my parents, in-laws, and everybody go and come. And then we work in that space, right? So family is very important.
Is it a busy household? Did you have a lot of traffic coming through it?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. But when it comes to, my profession, I work with clients all across the globe, USA and Australia and Europe, everywhere.
I do want to break down the three roles that you stated, and just keep in mind that because we only have an hour to do this, we might not be able to really sink our teeth into everything. And actually, so C-suite and E-suite I've heard of before, but just as like a Cliff's Notes, I don't actually know what D-suite is.
Absolutely, yeah. It's one more layer which becomes easier for people to understand the clientele. Yeah. So D suits is nothing but directors, senior directors, in that level, right? Some organizations, some industries may be calling them, AGM, DGM, GM, something like that, general manager, something like that. Some industries like, product organizations, and then the IT industry especially, right? So they have these, director, senior director, these designations. So, to segregate, to identify different set of, clientele, anyway, I've started using CDE, and it becomes easier for people to remember as.
It just goes to show the broad network that a corporation can have at hand, having the C-suite, a D-suite, and an E-suite. There's quite a lot of hands that are involved in making a business run efficiently, especially when you're trying to scale out. And as a result of that, I think the emotionality and that personal connection is one of the first things that is threatened. And yet is also one of the most important things to make sure your company runs efficiently, minimizes churn, it improves productivity. Not that I have any of the stats on me right away, but I'm sure I can pull up stats that indicate that a happy workplace where people are getting along usually leads to higher productivity, whereas a toxic workplace usually leads to a lot of turnover and a lot of bitterness and poor product. I mean, it's basic human function, and yet it gets so easily overlooked. So let me take a moment to look into just briefly how these three relate together. So I'll ask you first about the emotional management side of it. So how exactly does somebody come to you and say that they have that issue? Or is it a matter of like they come to you with one issue and then it turns out there's something going on here. We're going to dig into it because we talk about that a lot on the program, and I love exploring this theme when we get the chance.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's again a great question, Joseph,
Thank you.
right? See, when some people look at me, see, I'm pretty, what can I say, active on social media, especially in LinkedIn, right? So I write a lot in these areas: workplace conflict, emotional management, leadership growth, right? So when somebody comes across my post or something where they see some alignment with, their value system, or what exactly they are going through, right? Then they approach me, then we get into that conversation. So in such relationships, right, coaching relationships or coaching interventions, probably they are in the middle of some major conflict, or middle of some major roller coaster, emotional roller coaster ride, right? Then we start dissecting and then understand, okay, what exactly is the core, what is happening in the inner side of who they are as a person, right? So when I'm coaching somebody, even though, I mentioned about CED, suit and all, the minute they sit in front of me, I look at them as a human being, right? The roles, we keep it aside, right? The who of the person is where the focus starts. Who exactly that human being who is sitting in front of me with a big goal or a great problem statement, which is kind of disturbed their life, right? That's where the focus starts. As we go deeper, it goes inward, right? Even though they may come up and saying that, what, I'm leading a big team, there are 100 people under me, around 25 direct reports, right? Everything is okay, but with 4 or 5, I'm having a problem, right? I'm not able to somehow manage, because of which, productivity issue, then the revenue problem, everything they bring in. So at the outset, it may look like, he or she is having a team issue, team conflict, right? But the minute this focus is on that person who is sitting in front of me, then the journey goes inward. We start peeling one layer by another. The core, what we find normally, almost 100% is like the emotions that which are triggering them to act in some way, right? So it could be that, they are communicating in a different way because of various reasons, right? Reasons could be a number of reasons. It could be that, they have some past experience with a specific team, team member or the direct reportee, or they have already heard something about that person. So all these biases, stereotypical thought process, they influence, and then they make some, different decision. Yeah. So that creates some impact. So focus goes inward. We identify by peeling layer by layer. Once that core is addressed, right? Whatever the emotions, whatever the problems my client is going through, once it is addressed, then it is going outward. Then we bring in, other stakeholders. Okay, which are all the stakeholders that you have an issue, and what sort of issue that you are focusing on, right? So most of the time, what happens, the minute we go deeper, we address that core, their, awareness is evoked at a higher level, half of the problem is solved. Yeah, it's more of putting some, ointment or something, right? Because it is still outwards, right? So that's how, it works when it comes to dealing with conflict in such scenarios.
And something that had only occurred to me through this conversation, but it could have come up in other conversations. It's just a matter of like the more I participate, the more it gives my brain an opportunity to make connections that I hadn't made before. So here's one that I made is that the kind of pressure that a person has to deal with running a massive operation that is impacting potentially tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people's lives leads people to an emotional state that I'm not sure human beings were ever properly equipped to deal with. And what I have to wonder is if the kinds of emotional issues that crop up are truly unique to the kind of pressure that a person is dealing with, or I don't know if it's one or the other, maybe it could be both, or it's a matter of like the issues that people are dealing with are still the kind of issues that somebody might be dealing with as a parent in a household, but they're amplified and they're heightened and the potency of it is much stronger, but the root of the issue is still the same.
Absolutely. You have nailed it,
Thank
right?
you.
As you rightly mentioned, Joseph, right? When they come with high intense emotions, right? Numbers are revolving around, in their mind, right? See, it could be something like, mergers and acquisitions, right? They have to deal with two different cultures of two different organizations, right? There is a change management to be taken care of, right? There is a resistance for change from both the organizations, right? This leader, my client, may be the one who is sitting in between these two organizations, right? So in such scenarios, the emotions are so intense, right? They may not even be able to define what exactly they are going through, right? They will come and tell me that, what, I'm going through a huge problem. As we delve deeper into understanding their goal or a problem statement, they may struggle in defining it, right? So in such situations, they are getting into such situations because they are not taking any pause, right? All the problems, it's running in high speed, it's like an jet speed in their mind. They forget to take any pause. We say, in communication, taking a pause is very powerful. So the focus goes into how can I help them to take some pause so that they can center themselves. It could be that, I may introduce some relaxation techniques, right? I just make them close their eyes for a few seconds and then make them, guided relaxation, right? The minute their body gets relaxed, right, it creates such a positive impact in their mind and heart and lung and gut, right? They will be able to look at the problem they are facing from a third party, third person eye view, right? Then they get to, define it properly. They understand what exactly is the problem, right? So this Spice Girls song, you would have heard, right? What exactly, is the problem, right? So, that's very, very important to go deeper in understanding the core problem that they are having. That may take time. We have to give them the time. It may not be an easy thing for them.
It does tie into the next question that I wanted to ask, and I'm aware that it's been explored to some extent, but I want to state it anyways, just to make sure that it's focused, and if there's other elements that we need to add to it, we can. But in your description, one of the things that you state is that your conversations are inward focused, which ties into with what we've been discussing here. So, do you ever have a intention for how inward focused you want the conversation to be, or is it just a matter of going with the flow and trying to understand how deep does the issue get? And then the follow-up question to it is also if conversations of an outward nature have value, because in the interest of this theme that I have been exploring, a part of me is also starting to want to address the opposite side of it, which is, okay, maybe we don't need to dig in each time. Maybe there are issues that are just surface level, and then you end up, you know what I mean? Like digging too deep, you hit a pipe and there's an oil spill, like power goes out for the whole grid. Sometimes we should have just looked at just bandaging a wound,
Yeah. See, here I would like to introduce a word, Joseph. Yeah. See, systemic coaching. Right? I'm
Systemic
a
coaching.
systemic
Okay,
coach,
interesting. Okay.
right? So when we say systemic, of course, you may be aware of what I mean by systemic coaching, right? Nobody is alone, right? I would like to bring in one more, philosophy here, which is Ubuntu principle, right? I am because we are, right? So when we are talking about, that inward journey, right? When the bigger problem is getting resolved, yeah, or the focus is on addressing the bigger problem, as I mentioned earlier, the initial few sessions, the focus will be in understanding the who of the person, right? Even though there is a huge ecosystem around that particular person, right? Or if it is a group conversation, right? So I also do group coaching and team coaching. In that scenario, the group or a team is considered as a single entity. That's either a single person or the single entity. What exactly they want to be resolved, right? What are the triggering points which are creating or enhancing the conflicting scenario or the problem scenario, right? So, as I delve deeper in addressing that, it is important for me to go inward, yeah, either in that person or the group, right? So how does it happen, that inward journey? The process itself is, such that there is no other way you are letting the client to go inward, right? Because the way that I ask questions, right, that is in fact the beauty of being an ICF credentialed coach as well, right? The process, the framework, all the competencies that we learn, the ethical practices that we have, right, without dissecting or delving deeper into understanding the goal, we do not move to any solution. I would say some, out of 1 hour session, some 20 to 25 minutes we spend in understanding the core problem. See, when we do that, by default, the journey goes inward, right? At the same time, as you rightly mentioned, that outward is also very, very important because, we say this, KPI and KRA, right? So KPI is something that which is going to, determine how you are going to succeed, right? KRA is where it's going to show, right? So you can see, KPI is something like inward journey, right? KRA is something that it is going to show. Where is it going to show? Once the problems, the core is addressed, where is it going to show? In the ecosystem the client is part of, right? It's not, again, one more thing here I would like to highlight. It's when we are talking about ecosystem in the organizational setup, it's not only the stakeholders involved, the people, human beings involved, also the processes and the system the organization has, the strategy of the organization, the vision and mission of the organization, the objective of the organization, right? So the entire ecosystem of my client, whether they are individual or the group, right, there is a huge dependency in the other elements of the organization, right? Say, for example, my client is having a goal, yeah. If that goal doesn't align with the organizational goal, there is going to be a deeper conflict, which may not be where we may not even have any solution, right? In that scenario, it is either the client has to tweak their goal, right? If it is going to help them in their growth path, or it's very important that they move out of the system, right? So you cannot have both, right? Misalignment, and then you want to be a part of the system, that cannot happen. So it's very, very important that we address that, right? So addressing my client's goal becomes the inward journey, and then aligning it with the organizational, the structure of the organization, structure of the team, right? The strategy part of it, vision, mission, objective, the systems, the processes involved in that organization, that becomes the outward approach, right? But it has to start from inward, then goes outward.
I see. Okay, so the two of them really are, they're both equally important, because if all you do is address things inwardly and then you don't, I guess, calibrate it so that it can then go back and function in the remainder of the company, and then it was basically for naught. Wow, that's actually quite the takeaway for me. I never really put that together myself. The one thing that really stuck out with me is the idea of having that inward conversation, but with a group rather than with a person. Because when I picture a scenario like that, I feel like you still end up having maybe like one person who's getting a particular insight, and then everyone else is hopefully relating to it, but you're only dealing with one individual at a time. So what stands out in the inward exploration when you are dealing with a group of people at a time?
Absolutely. That's again a great question, right?
Thank you.
So as a part of this ICF journey, right? That's where having this credential is it's very, very important, right? Even when I'm dealing with a group of people, right? if they are a part of a single organization, right? Whenever I'm doing any work with a sponsor, then everybody in that group belongs to the same organization, right? So when whether it is a group coaching or a team coaching, I'll be looking at the group as a single entity. Yeah. Not only that I am looking at it as a single entity, that I also communicate it as a part of the initial exploration. When we have the discovery call sort of a intervention or the interaction with the group of people who are going to be coached by me, the first thing what we say is, it's very, very important that the entire group is aligned with what we want to achieve, right? The group coaching intervention itself starts from there, creating that group goal. We don't stop it there, align it with the organizational goal, right? Otherwise, we will be working in silos, right? The group is working in something, whereas the sponsor's expectation is something else totally, right? So it's very, very important that everybody is in alignment. And the second thing what I do again, what I learned from ICF, code of ethics and principles and competencies, is like the transparency in communication, right? So when I say that I'll be communicating everything, how the coaching will work, and then how the progress will happen, how we will be tracking and measuring the progress, the initial conversation, all the stakeholders will be there. Yeah. So it's not just between me and my coaches, it's also the sponsors who will sit. It could be the project managers, product managers, whoever's group is a part of mine, as well the critical stakeholders who are HR, right? So everybody will be there. There will be a proper launch session which happens, right, for every batch, where this communication goes. Not only orally, I also show them my PPT, where I explain what is coaching, what is not coaching, and then how the transparency will be there, right? And whatever we discuss, whatever the one-on-one or the group conversation that happens within that room where sponsor is not present, the confidentiality is maintained, right? The in-depth information will not be shared with the sponsor. Whereas some report will go where, how the group is progressing overall. Since we have all these foundations set by ICF, it becomes easier for us coaches to follow that, right? And it helps everybody. It's not only for the coaches, for the entire organization, it helps. This is how any challenges when it comes to, group coaching that can be, resolved. And apart from the transparency and then the communication, confidentiality, there will be a frequent check happens in what exactly the group wants to achieve, right? We may start with some strategy, some goal, right? But every 2 or 3 sessions during the journey, it may be 6 months, 9 months, or 1 year journey normally happens with group coaching. So every 3 or 4th session, there will be a check, there will be recontracting. Then we decide the path, then which is appropriately communicated to the HR or the sponsors, come back to the whiteboard, and then we create, right? So the journey itself is so beautiful. All the challenges can be addressed then and there. If I feel like I'm not able to manage something on my own after practicing all the already available tools, then we do have supervisors, with whom mentors, right, with I connect with them, and then take that problem, again maintaining the confidentiality of the client. I share my challenges with them, then I take in inputs from them, and then start applying. This is the beauty of being an ICF coach or any credential coach, is like there is an ecosystem, or there is already a process already set, right? Our job is to understand that process, understand the core of why something is already there, and then follow it to the T. So that way everybody is saved.
So what I would like to follow up on that is the idea that at a certain point, after you've done your part and realize that it has to be escalated, but it reminded me of something where, and this is of all the examples, it reminded me when I had to go get my teeth pulled, and my dentist, who I'd gone to since I was a kid, said, your wisdom teeth are way too impacted. I can't be the one to pull them out, so I'm sending you to a specialist. I would love to hear a specific example, but what's been a situation where you felt like it was time to, like, you've done your part, but it had to be brought to someone that had mentored you?
Yeah. So it's like, see, when we say supervisor, it's not a hierarchical, right?
Okay.
It's more of the label given to somebody who can address all the problems that we may be having, right? So as far as the the challenges are concerned, right? it is nothing to do with escalation. In the perspective of escalation, it's more about how I manage myself as a coach, right? See, initial days of my coaching, right? So, and I was not sure about the clients if they show extreme emotions, right? See, crying is okay. So, crying is something that we frequently see, right? Especially when they share something so intense, which is coming from their heart. Crying is something that we frequently see. But if they show intense emotion, yeah, where there is a possibility of them getting hurting themselves or hurting me, right? Again, I have not gone through any such scenarios, but initial days I had that thought, right? Because of which, what I did, I was kind of avoiding, taking in certain clients, yeah, even which was absolutely okay, but it was not helping me in growing, right? So then I took that up to my mentor and a supervisor. Then they guided me. You know what's it? Then there is something to do with me. It's like it's a time for me to work on my inner, yeah. So inward journey is something that I had to go through at that point in time. Then my mentor showed me a couple of things which can help me to understand the emotional triggers that I may be, having when I deal with such clients, and then how I can overcome such challenges, right? So then slowly I started taking in people. Say, for example, earlier times, and I always used to check with people if they are going through any therapy or any psychological therapy, and all. I was not really open to take in such clients because I'm not equipped to do any therapy, right? I don't know how to deal with somebody who is undergoing some therapy, right? I had such biases, so that also was resolved when I took it up with my mentor. So nowadays I taken people who go through deeper challenges when it comes to psychological issues, right? So that is the inner journey, right? How I am changing myself, how I am molding myself from the challenges, from the biases, from the stereotypical thought process that I may be carrying all these years. So that's where the supervisors, mentors are very helpful.
Okay, fantastic. We're at around 30 minutes, and so I wanted to shift gears because I wanted to talk about the subject that I had alluded to, which was workplace conflict management. Now, again, sort of the theme here is that we've some of the elements of it are brought into it already, such as the nature of podcasting.
Absolutely.
So, can we kind of have like a fresh start with this, and just in the idea of like specifically a workplace conflict is. What's the first step for you to deal with it? How similar is it to what we've described, where you start with sort of like a group meeting, try to understand what are the alignments, and then we dig in inwardly. And so, yeah, let's start with that.
See, when it comes to workplace conflicts, right? So if the organization is identifying some workplace conflicts, right? They may come up with some interventions, and it could be that leadership development programs they may have, right? See, coaching is something that now organizations are open for group coaching or coaching, right? Individual coachings are happening, but again, only at the higher level, right? When it comes to sponsors taking up coaching, right? As far as workplace conflict management is concerned, yeah, it is very, very important that organizations start observing at least at the middle level. Yeah, if ideally speaking, it should be seen from the bottom line till the top line, right? Since it is a new thing when it comes to coaching, yeah, team coaching or group coaching in majorly in India, right? It's not that open. It is opening up, but it is not that open, right? So it's very, very important that at least they start identifying workplace conflicts at the mid level. When I say mid-level, again, depending on the size of the organization, the definition of mid-level changes, right? If it is a small organization, the employees or the leaders, whether they are leaders or managers, right? At some 10, 12 years of experience, right? That's where the midlife crisis also starts, right? If it is a well-grown organization, if it's a big organization, right? Then it may start from 12 years to 15 years of experienced employees in the organization, right? So it's very, very important that workplace conflict is addressed from there. Yeah. By doing that, majorly many workplace conflicts can be taken out at the butt level. Right. You don't have to really, water it. Sometimes, they unknowingly they keep watering the seed. It becomes a big tree, fruits start coming up, all bitter fruits, right? Then there is no way you have to cut the tree. Right. So instead of investing all the money, resources, and everything in resolving it at the surface level, the coaching intervention will help them in taking it out at the butt level, right? So this is the approach organizations should have, yeah, sponsors should have, right? See, for that, and when it comes to the individual level, it's very, very important for people to understand that they need help, right? Not all the things can be handled on their own, right?
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm talking about coaching. I have been coaching leaders, right? When it comes to any conflict that I may be having with my vendor or with my client, I do have a support system, right? I invest money, I pay my mentor, I pay my coach, and then get things done, right? So that way, instead of waiting for 1 month for a problem to get resolved, I'm able to have some solution within an hour of discussion with my mentor or a coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very important that the individuals start accepting that they have a problem. They are going through some workplace conflict, right? They may have 100 different, solutions already. But now, if you look at any organization, there are 5 different generations working in it, right? In a team, there will be somebody from 20 years to 50 years. Everybody is working in a single team. If you look at the way that we were brought up, and then the millennials, the Z, Gen brought up, it's a huge gap, right? So there is an intergenerational gap which can create some conflict. So it's very important for people to open up and accept that yes, I do have a problem when it comes to. I mean, I am a part of workplace conflict. It is very important that I accept it as a first thing, right? That like the denial cycle, that grief cycle, right? People undergo that,
Mm-hmm.
denial, and then slowly there is resistance, and then see for something, then they come into that acceptance stage. So it's very important that they accept it, and of course they can try. They don't have to immediately hire a coach or a mentor or somebody. They can try with the existing tools, but it should not be for a long time. When they know that okay, it is not, it cannot be resolved, then it's better to invest in that and then hire a coach or a mentor or whoever is the right person, get it resolved. Yeah. So this is very, very important, Joseph, for
Mm-hmm.
all the organization to look at, especially the intergenerational gap that we have.
Mm-hmm. The reason why I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that I have a personal stake in it is, well, frankly, I think everyone has at some point or another had a workplace conflict. And the trouble is that aside from being a key holder a few times at a retail store, I've never had actually, no, that's not true. I actually was a team leader at one point. I don't know why I blanked that. That was like the most important thing I needed to bring up to this conversation. And what I found was when in the heat of the conflict and going through a lot of that emotion, I got a feedback form from HR stating my happiness level, and let's see, what does it go up to 5? Yeah, I don't need to count very high. So it. And HR reached out to me and we had a good conversation. But some of the changes were, while positive, what they did was they undermined a lot of the grief that I had experienced going one direction. So, and I'm just trying to be vague about this because I do want to protect people that I've worked with in the past, but essentially, trying and grinding to make one system work, experiencing a lot of grief to make that system work. And then in an effort to resolve a lot of these conflicts in the most like steelman benefit of the doubt point of view that I can take, there was change necessitated. And then I thought, man, I just went through a lot of that essentially now for nothing. That's not the solution that I wanted. What I wanted was a more peaceful way to continue working on this problem. And because it also on a tangible sense, it also meant a lot of hours were going to be cut. I said, okay, well, if you're going to cut my hours, how about I just cut the rest on my own? And I decided to leave. And so the issue that I have experienced more in like at the most mid-level, but mostly below mid-level, is that we don't feel like our conflicts are valid, and we don't feel like HR is our friend. And we see this on social media. There's like career coaches on TikTok saying, HR is not your ally. They're there to protect the other people. They're not there to protect you. So don't go to them like they're your parents or something like that. And I think there is truth to that. So who's responsible here? Is it that the company has to watch for their employee behavior and try to figure out what is the problem going on? When does a company make the right choice to say, okay, we can spend tons of resources trying to get this person to fit, but maybe they're just not a good fit for the company. Maybe we should cut them. It's a hard choice to make, but yeah, who's the first person that has to start dealing with this?
Definitely, it's a profound question as well, a very sensitive one, right? Because HR is the the main contact point for us, right, when it comes to organizations, right?
Yeah.
So here, what we need to understand first, Joseph, right? They are also human beings like us, right? Like how each role has its own strengths and limitations, right? They also have. Yeah. Being a CEO of a company doesn't make him or her having complete freedom to do whatever they want in that organization. See, why do we have, many people in a board? It can be single person, call himself as a president of a board, right? Even, but he or she may be the president of the board, but he has a whole set of board of directors sitting in that board. Why do we have that? If you look at it, each and every role has its own limitations, right? Likewise, HR also has their own limitations, right? Only a few HR leaders have a say in the major decisions being taken in the organization, right? When HR doesn't have a say in the decision, they have no other choice but to follow what has been given to them. So, say for example, somebody is negotiating something with the HR, right? Say for example, you are joining a new organization. Of course, the salary package related negotiation happens with the HR, right? You want the highest package, of course, yeah, because you have your agenda, and HR has their own target. So they have an upper limit with which they can play around, right? Beyond that, that HR person, whichever level they have, right? Even it could be the CHRO, right? CHRO hiring a CEO, right? But that CHRO also will have that limitation. Beyond certain level, they cannot go. So it's very, very important that we understand what is there in the market, right? And then go with the proof. Yeah, go with data. Whenever you are having a conversation with a HR, right, go with some supporting data for the argument that you have, the debate points that you have. Go with that, show it to them, right? When you have that data, you are actually helping that HR to help you. Right? So they may have a conversation with the, see, if you are a critical, talent to be retained, right? They will fight. Right? So it's up to us to show what our strength is. If we let emotions play here, right? If I let bias play a role here, right? If I say, what, all the HRs are like that, right? HRs behave this way, X, Y, Z. If I go with that mindset, whatever, even the HR is willing to give me whatever I want, I will totally spoil the relationship here, right? So here, what I would like to convey is everything is energy exchange, Joseph, right? What is the energy that I take in, whether it is HR, finance, or whoever it may be, right? The same energy is what I am going to receive, right? So instead of going with some bias, thinking that okay, HR will behave in a specific way, right? Go properly prepared. Whenever you are having a conversation with HR, then obviously the energy that you inhibit, even though the other party is not aligned with that energy, the second and third conversation you will see that okay, energy is getting aligned, right? Still, if it is not aligned, then that is not the right company for you to work.
Yeah.
Right. So we should know how to deal with people. At the end of the day, they are human beings. Right. We have to go with that mindset. They are not, some aliens who, came here to ruin our lives. Right. So we have to go with the right mindset. So that's very, very important.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it so far, and I want to follow up with this. Well, actually, first, before I follow up, I also want to make sure that I'm putting this together in my mind. So the objective here is that, hypothetically, if this were me, but if I'm bringing an issue, yes, there is an emotional issue there, but like we established and what we talk about is that we are identifying a symptom and we need to dig inward and understand what is the root cause of this, and then we need to put our facts together. So when we go to HR, we say, here's the cause. Here are several examples of this. In here, in my assessment, is the effect that it's probably having. It might answer for why several people have left, why turnover is more than is average, and then from there, HR. Obviously, you want to be a critical role in it, and then HR will, of course, do their part to maintain us, because it's much more taxing on everybody for people to leave than to have to retain talent. And how does that affect the culture? How does that affect workflow? How does that affect SOPs? All of it. Well, actually, it shouldn't affect SOPs. That's kind of the point. So I'll let that one go. I think, and I want to get to as challenging as the issue can be, but I think in spite of all of this, some people might feel like it's futile. And the reason why is because if your issue, the higher up that the issue goes, the harder it feels like it is to affect change. Would you by any chance have any case studies? I mean, you want to protect client confidentiality, no problem, but do you have case studies of where it really felt like people and the employees were able to start like kind of working together and affect a change that resonated with the higher levels? And right before you answer, I just want to point out a key point that really sticks out to me that is helping change my mind on this, is the idea that C-suite, D-suite, E-suite, they have a board to answer to. So the board are the ones that are paying attention to the behavior of the other people, and so they're the ones that can impart judgment. That's huge. That's a big part of that. So I want to make sure I'm aware of that before I give you the floor.
Absolutely, totally. See, I mean, I don't want to, create a canvas where, everything is all green, bed of roses, right? It is not.
Right. Yeah.
Along with bed of roses, you have thorns, right? So whenever we undergo such challenges, right? Okay, as to answer to your question, my role as a coach or a trainer, I may not even know after some point, right? I may not know what is the decision being taken against a specific person or other, right? Even if they take something, I mean, it doesn't go from me, right? I do not suggest somebody to suggest to HRers, the sponsor or the organization, to what, this person doesn't align with your organization, so you take them away. So see, such decisions I cannot make. I do not do.
Right.
Yeah, that my role is not that, right? So once my coaching is done, right, whatever decision being taken, I may not even know. If some decision is being taken against one of my coachee, I may not even know. Even if I come to know, I don't have any say on that, because my role as a coach or as a leadership development facilitator, my job is limited in terms of making some critical decisions to take somebody away from the system. So that would be my answer. At the same time, as a part of facilitation, when we after the intervention, right? They go through some 6 months of journey. If somebody doesn't show a major change, right? So also even that, it doesn't go from my end because of the confidentiality issues. I'm not supposed to share what is what, but at the same time, how HR or the organization make decision is like, there will be some assessment, right? Before the intervention, there will be some assessment, and after the intervention, there will be some assessment. If the assessment scores are still low, right? If it doesn't show any progress, then the organization will take some action against that. It could be demoting them or taking out of the system, or giving them some warning, something like that. But when it comes to coaching, such instances are very, very low. Because initially, when we see that, okay, if somebody is not showing any progress through coaching, right, it has nothing to do with the coach, whether it is me or some other coach, because we have only certain level of control over that, right? Then what we do is we assess whether that particular employee is coachable or not.
Right.
There's a possibility that that person is not willing to open up, right? So even though we talk about confidentiality and everything, if that person doesn't trust the system of coaching, it has nothing to do with me as an individual, right? If the person doesn't trust that process, because end of the day, organization is paying me, right? So they may think that, okay, whatever I'm sharing with my coach, and if my coach shares with my organization, what will happen? Such biases will be there, right? Because of which they may not be willing to open up, they may not be willing to explore. In such scenarios, we escalate. We tell the organization, probably one is like, the person is not coachable, or they may need a different coach.
Right.
We also suggest that, why don't you try a different coach for them? Yeah, it could be anything, right? So to answer to your question precisely, I may not know what is the decision being taken against anybody.
Okay. No, and again, that's why I always want to make sure that confidentiality is expressed, because I never want people to say something that could get them in trouble, land them in some hot water. But as we were discussing this, and we're on the last leg of the episode, so we can wind down from this point. But I'll leave with something that I think is important to keep in mind too, is that the idea of the collective body working together to tackle issues that rise practically to the top don't actually need to stay within the company. Public discourse is also a huge impact on this. I forget who did this, but there was this publication that would have like worst company of the year every year, and Bank of America kept winning, but a bunch of gamers got together and targeted Electronic Arts as, I mean, the idea of being compared to a company that had like foreclosed on people's homes or whatever atrocities they were committing definitely warranted change from within the company. So it is important to say, like, if these things stay internal, like what we said, if it stays internal, you might not solve the problem. But once you figured out the internal issue and then you say it outwardly, bring it to the public for their assessment, then you might be able to affect change that way. So that, to me, is a key takeaway as well in all of this.
See, that is the reason we have lawsuits and then legal system within the organization as well. Yeah, so that's the reason you see, in all MNCs, all multinational organizations, wherever they have presence all over the world, right? So the parent company, wherever it stays. Say for example, one company from USA, right? So they have presence all over the world in India, different states. Then they have to follow the US law as well the local law, right? So that's the reason we have complaints team, the legal team within the organization who helps in tracking the complaints, keeping an eye on that. As you said, if it goes outside the organization, right? If it is, media is publishing something where we will have little control over it, then the legal system will, take care of it. Yes, of course, definitely. So that can also create some huge challenge, conflicts within the organization. The trust quotient will go down with the employees, even though whatever media says is wrong, right? The trust quotient will, go down in the motivational level will go down in the organization, right? The employees of the organization. Then that needs to be addressed as well. That comes as a part of change management or, even conflict management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a complicated web that can extend and have far-reaching consequences on a lot of people. And it goes back to something that it occurred to me earlier, just in the idea of like, we all rely on people. And I mean, this is an entrepreneurial space. I'm an entrepreneur. I think of myself as a pretty individualistic person, but even I realize that like, if I have to cross a bridge, there's somebody working there that's gonna, crossing a drawbridge, right? Someone has to work to do that. Someone has to work to clean up, to take out the trash and maintain the power and run companies and maintain law and order. So like, yeah, we can be as individualistic as is warranted, but we all rely on other people, and so we have to be aware of that.
Definitely.
I wanted to, just because you mentioned your ICF credentials a couple of times, and I wanted to establish somewhat of a new theme on the program, just because I don't talk about it too much, is just the educational side of it. I think it's definitely alluring for anybody, and I'm guilty of this too, by the way, of just saying, well, I know things. Why don't I become a coach, right? So I realized that there's so much more to it, and so I sort of like dialed it back a little bit and said, hey, you know what, I'm doing here in media. Let's just do that until people start asking me questions. But what were some of the things that really stuck out to you in your education? I mean, there's the frameworks that you mentioned earlier, and I think the technical side of it that you mentioned earlier. But in terms of like insights and really like perspective changing, what were some of the things that your credentials and your education had been imparted onto you?
Definitely. It's a profound question, Joseph. Thanks for asking this.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
I have been
That's what I do.
closely working with leaders for, since 2010-11, right? When I started my entrepreneurial journey, right? But my ICF journey started in, 2020, right? So if you ask me what is the difference, as far as results are concerned, as far as adding values are concerned, right? Of course, I have been adding values, right? That's the reason I was able to sustain all these years, right? And in fact, till recent times, 80% of my business is coming from, still I would say, right, coming from referrals, right? Unless until I add value, I transform lives, nobody is going to refer me to their friends and network, right? So what is the difference ICF or getting credentialed make? First is the personal transformation, Joseph, right? Mm-hmm. So my skin has become thicker today compared to 4 years ago, right? Now I am capable of handling any sort of clients, right? If I feel like I may not be able to handle something, right? I can quickly take the decision. Either go back to my ecosystem, check how to handle it, yeah, take that support, handle it, or I can also close the chapter. I can confidently say, you know what, I don't think this is going to work out between you and me. I can refer a couple of my friends, you have a conversation, right? And then I am also moving on, the client will also move on, right? So the closure also becomes easier. So that is the personally transformational journey, right? As far as the coaching practice is concerned, business is concerned. Second, the learning. As a part of this, see, I'm a deep learner. Okay, so I'm addicted to deep learning. Right? Wherever I see an opportunity to learn something deeply, I just get myself enrolled, in that. I cannot sit at the surface for a long time, right?
Right. Yeah.
So since that is one of my core strength as well, right? So this journey helped me in delving certain topics at a deeper level, right? So here, choosing the training entity is very very important. Yeah. So that is something that I did, especially with my PCC journey. I chose the right entity, and then I even planned who should be my mentors. Right. I waited till they started their cohort and then joined. Even though I had certain challenges in starting at that point in time, I didn't want to miss that opportunity. I joined. Right. So it's one is the personal transformation, personally how I am growing as not only as a coach, as a human being, right? And then the second, when it comes to the business, right? See, earlier times say, some breakthrough will happen, say after 3 sessions or 4 sessions. Today I'm able to do it in a single session, the first session itself, right?
Mhm.
So that is happening because of the learning journey that I have put myself into, right? In fact, just 2 weeks ago, I had a first session with a client where we didn't know each other, right? We had a conversation within a week. He enrolled for the program. The first session, within 40 minutes, he said, I got my eureka moment, Suba, right? So that was like a very emotional moment even for me, right? The first session when I can create something. Again, I don't want to take any credit. It's a co-creation process, right?
Right.
When I am able to do that, I'm able to enable that in my clients within that first or second session. That I see as a, growth as a coach. So like that, and my confidence in pitching for corporate,
Hmm.
the business, corporate business, right? Confidence in pitching, and then me getting opportunities to get that business. Not only in generating leads, also conversions. Right? So multiple levels, I would say it's like a 360-degree transformation for me.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that's why I wanted to focus on more of the personal development side, because like with my college program too, and I think with a lot of programs is that you're there with like-minded people, and so in between what the teachers and what the professors are talking about and the work being done, there is also the connection that happens with your peers as well, and sharing in that experience. And then again, it is coming from somebody who, if I'm being honest, kind of hated school for like the first 15 years of my life. I like classes. Like I like the idea of like going to a class, once a week or twice a week for something focused, whether that's training a skill or writing classes or whatever. I love classes. I think for me, I just had a really difficult time with the sort of like the pre 9 to 5 nature of like going to school Monday to Friday. That drove me crazy. But I don't want to get into that because we're almost done the episode, and this is not therapy, as I need to remind myself every so often. What I would like to know from where things are headed for you is, what are some of the challenges that your platform is facing right now? Do you feel like you're trying to rank higher on Google, or your social media feel like you said you're very active on LinkedIn, so I know you have your strengths, but I'm just curious about what are some of the things that you want to work on right now?
Absolutely. See, majorly I focus on LinkedIn, right?
Mm-hmm.
But of course, when it comes to social media, the algorithm changes that media go through, right? So coping up with that is been a challenge, right? Because we work in certain way, knowing the algorithm. Then suddenly, especially nowadays, after this Gen AI and all these technological advancements, the changes are every day, happening every day, right? Even LinkedIn has been introducing a lot of new stuff every day, right? So coping up with that, even though I may create a ecosystem around me, right? I can create that support system around me, but coping with these changes and then going in the same speed has been a challenge. When I say coping with the changes, going in that same speed. Yeah. That has been a major challenge that I'm facing, nowadays.
Actually, I'd love to just unpack this briefly. So if I can see you for like 5 more minutes, I would really love to just
Sure.
address this because it's a fascinating subject. So like myself as a 90s raised a millennial, right before the internet took off and became publicly accessible, I was going through school, and a lot of the knowledge that was being imparted came from the idea that our institutions and our trajectory was pretty well set in stone. So you go to school, education, job, marriage, house. It's all good, right? People can still do that. It's not that that has been removed or anything like that. But with the onset of the internet, which has really created the new era that we live in, change has become more rapid. And so much so that really every year now, change has just continued to exponentially increase. And so as such an AI junkie, I'm surprised I haven't brought AI up every episode. And so we had this very unique perspective where we saw an outlook worth 90 years of a lived experience, not to dissolve, but was now one road that we can take, and then people can take the others. And I think the up and coming generations, even Gen Z, are more adaptive to change because they're born into it and are more used to it. And we're raising like a new kind of species here. I can't exaggerate that enough. But the downside is, I think, is the lack of muscle memory, is because by doing something for a long time and learning those lessons that you only learn after doing something 1,000 times, by being forced to constantly change and adapt, I think that leads to a dissipation in the quality of work being done. So that's my fear, and I'm curious to hear what would be your point of view on that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right. See, till few years ago, just recent times, right? LinkedIn has been my single source of, social media that still I rely on that, right? Apart from all the other, networking and all other, lead generation platforms that I use, there are a lot of, coachy, connecting coaches and coaches, platforms, right? So beyond all that, when it comes to social media, whether it is building a brand or generating leads or conversions, LinkedIn has been my space. Since 2015, I have been writing on LinkedIn, right? But recent times, the key struggle, again, as I mentioned earlier, going with that same speed, right? And it is definitely, pulling me down, slightly slowing my journey, slowing down my journey, right? Then I have to, what? No, you know what? You just try your best. See, it is not a race or something. At the same time, there is it is a fact that there are 100 different coaches, thousands of coaches. Tomorrow it's going to be millions of them,
Yep.
right? Getting credentials every day, right? So how am I going to differentiate myself as well, sustain in that, space, right? Because I know I'm not into any competition or something. That is something I'm very clear, right? I don't do any competitive analysis and all. I've never done. I'm not planning to do right now, right? But to be there, keep on being that unique in that unique space. It is a challenge. So nowadays, I see that it is kind of slowing me down when it comes to dealing with social media.
And so to wrap this up, what would you say, if I can ask it in a strategic sense, what would you really like to see be worked on for you in the next 5 years?
Oh yes, I know. Definitely mastery quotient of being a coach. It's already I've moved from doing coaching to being a coach, right? So that is one space where that mastery journey of being mastery, that has to happen definitely, right? That will come with the experience, and then I do more and more. Of course, already I have certain things as mastery, but looking at fellow human beings as human beings, right? So in that space, I don't judge people. No, those things are something that I've already worked on. And then more and more globally, there should be, my name should be seen, as somebody who can, who is working with clients globally. Even though I'm working with clients globally, increasing that numbers, expanding my horizon all across the globe. That is it, mastery, and then expanding globally.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, it's something I'm not rooting for anybody I've talked to, but I'm definitely rooting for you just as much as anybody else. But with that, I'm afraid this is all the time that we've got for today. So if you did have any like last minute, any like a word of wisdom or any thoughts or opinions or anything that has been floating in your mind as a result of this conversation, feel free to take a moment to share them and then let the audience know where they can find you.
Absolutely, definitely. Thank you first. I mean, again, right, for inviting me in your platform and then introducing me to your audience. Right, that's a huge, support from your end for all the coaches. Right, I definitely heard the previous podcast as well. The way you are taking through the conversation, right, which is making people feel at ease. That brings in all the inner work that we do out of the system, right? So thank you so much for that. So
You're welcome.
my message to audience is whenever, whatever be the issue, right? It could be a physical challenge or a emotional challenge or a mental challenge or soul related challenge, right? Uh, Please work on identifying and accepting the challenge, right? And see how you can take it out of the system. One quick message what I would like to say is whenever we communicate, right, there is a huge process goes behind. There is an attitude, our belief system, our thought process, and everything comes in, and then we behave and then communicate in one way. To make that communication happen, there are four different organs, get aligned and then do that job, right? One is our brain, our mind, right, and our gut and lungs, right? Gut is very important for we being brave. My brain is to think logically, right? Speak logically. And then heart is to understand the emotions, the nuances which are there, right? And lung is very, very important to keep up that positive energy, which is oxygen, and then push out that, carbon dioxide, right? So ensure all these four organs are aligned in your system, right? If you feel something is going here and there, which will show in the form of for some physical discomfort or the mental discomfort or emotional discomfort or in your productivity, address it, accept it, and address it sooner than later. That would be my key message to everyone.
Of everything that you just said there, the idea that oxygen is positive energy and carbon dioxide is negative energy, I've never heard that before in my life. I have been sold on the value of breathing, but I've never been sold on the relationship between inhaling as positive act and then channeling a negative act as exhaling. So that's actually pretty incredible. Well, I mean, if we went after another 10 minutes, I think we'd have another 10 minutes of great things to talk about, but we don't. We're wrapping this bad boy up. So Suba, thank you again for your kind words. I think most of the reason why people are put at ease is because of the tenor of my voice. And I noticed that my voice actually drops a little bit if I had a few drinks, which I don't want to do. So I have to figure out a way to wake up hungover without actually drinking. So that's my challenge. And then otherwise, this is the Impactful Coaching Podcast. As always, if you want to reach out, we would love to hear from you, feedback, or you're a coach and you want to have a hand in being on this program. Happy to hear from you. It is Joseph, Joseph, at impactfulcoachingpodcast.com. The rest of it is spelled the way you think. And it is our endeavor to ensure that in whatever way you are helping those, we want to make sure that you are impactful while you're at it.